Good evening, everyone. It's the 24th of January, Friday, finally. Finished 2 weeks at Chicsa now. Next week will be my last week here. We'll start to get some of the results earlier in the week, and then from that, we'll determine what we're going to do when we take home. But tonight I want to pick back up with the cancer story and continue that and see how far we can get on that tonight. So at the end of part 2, it was kind of the beginning of December. I'd had a scan on the 7th, and then on the 8th, Vanderbilt called and told me to go to the ER immediately because of a blood clot. And a blood clot had killed my father, like when I was 12 years old, so years ago. But I didn't want to have to tell my mom, who was living with us at the time, about that. And she was like cleaning a house, so it was difficult to get in touch with her anyway. And I couldn't, on the ride there, and even while I was at the hospital all day, I couldn't get a straight answer where the blood clot was. Somebody told me it was in my heart, somebody told me my pelvis and my chest, and when all was said and done, they figured that it was around my port in my chest that I maybe had like 3 blood clots that were small there. But I had a large blood clot in my pelvis where all of the blood flow comes back up. And that's what they had been concerned about and why they called me in. My sister had told me that she called my brother to tell him, and he ended up having to leave work because it's like a blood clot, and we were all scared, and especially after what happened to our dad. And so it was a very emotional time. They sent me home with blood thinners. The following week we had a Christmas party at my work, and they do pictures. It's at the owner's house, and so he just got out for a little while. And I saw the pictures from that party, and my hair had just gotten so thin from the chemo. Like I already knew I was losing my hair. I'd be in the shower and scrubbing, and it would come out my fingers. Not like huge clumps, but it was enough to tangle my fingers. And when my nephew and brother had been down visiting, they tried to talk me into shaving my head, and I was like, it's the one piece of normal that I have left, and I just can't do that. And everybody that's known me growing up probably I was always a little prideful about my hair, and I'm never losing my hair. And so that was a difficult thing for me. And on Christmas Eve, I think it was, so Christmas Eve 2017, my brother did a video of his wife shaving his head, and he was like, for those of you that know me, I love my hair, but I love my brother more. And then she started to shave his head. And then my nephew did the same thing, and so I had to shave my head at Christmas. And there was like no going back then. So we finally did that. And luckily I didn't lose all of my body hair. Like I've heard that's a thing, eyebrows and everything. And I had a goatee at the time. I never really lost the goatee or it was just the hair on my head. But we went through that and started the new year. Nothing really happened in January. We got to February, and that was maybe we were a little bit more than halfway at that point through this chemo treatment. And so I remember we had a conversation with the doctor early in February when we were in for chemo, and we wanted to know about surgery again. And my doctor was like, no, there's no chance of surgery right now. We'll finish this chemo, and then maybe we'll give you a break or put you on a chemo pill, and then we'll come back in another few months and we'll do another round of chemo. And it was like, maybe then after that, I could have surgery. So we did the chemo that day, we left. We had a scan like the following week in between my chemo weeks. And then we went back like the last week of February, and we met with the doctor, and she's like, I met with the tumor board on Tuesday, and they think they can do surgery. So just based on the results of that last scan changed everybody's mind. So I think most of the tumors had about shrunk in half at that point. So a couple started at 10, they were down to about 5 centimeters in February. So she's like, well, we're gonna finish out this chemo though, see how far we can get, and then we'll go talk to the surgeons. So that's what we did. We finished chemo, went till the end of March, I think March 29th or so, 27th, something like that was my last day of chemo. And I remember like practically dancing out of the chemo facility, like this is the last time I'm gonna be here, you know? I didn't have a box. I was like, there's no more strings on me. And so we went home. I had to go in for a scan after that before the surgery was officially approved. Had that done. The tumor board met on April 10th of 2018 to discuss officially approving my surgery, which is my birthday. And I don't know if you remember from part 1, I mentioned that when my family was coming down, I told my nephew, I was like, by my birthday, it's going to be fine. And so on my birthday, they called and said that they're going to do surgery. And so I think my first appointment with the surgeon was on April 16th. Went in, met with Dr. Adriz at Vanderbilt. Loved Dr. Adriz. He was wonderful. He was honest, but confident, and I just felt very comfortable with him. And we went over the surgeries, and he was like, you have 2 options. We can do a surgery, and then you can go home and recover, and you come back in 6 weeks or so, and we do another surgery. Or we can try something we've never done here before, and that I've never done, and we'll go in and we'll do the first surgery, which was going to be to remove, I only had 1 tumor on the left side of my liver. So the first surgery was going to be to like wedge out that 1 tumor, and then they were going to perforate or serrate my liver, where they plan to remove basically the entire right side of my liver. And those of you that aren't familiar, the halves of the liver, they're not equal halves. The left side is much smaller. It's like maybe a 70-30 split or something. So they were going to take out much more of my liver than they were going to leave. So we elected to go with that. The advantage is there was only really 1 recovery. I was going to go in for surgery, have that 1 tumor removed. By serrating the liver, they started the cellular death of that half of my liver, and the liver regenerates. And so then it was supposed to prompt the left side of my liver to start growing, so that when we went to do the second surgery a week later, there would be enough healthy liver to sustain life. So went in for surgery on April 30th. It was first thing in the morning. We had to be there at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. My mom and my wife were there, or my wife must have taken me, and then my mom was watching the kids. I don't even remember. It's all a blur to me. But went into the surgery. It was supposed to take about 6 hours to do the surgery, if I recall. And it ended up taking like 8 hours. And when they got in there, when they started the surgery, they found out that I actually did have a blood clot in my heart. They had thought, I had heard that when I was going to have it checked out in December, but when everything was said and done, they had dismissed that. So it was never recorded that I had a blood clot in my heart. But when he was doing the surgery, he found it there, and he could have not done the surgery because of the blood clot. If they had known about the blood clot, they would not have done the surgery. So it was really a God thing, in my opinion, you know, that wasn't detected, they let it go. And that he, because he already had me open, decided to do the surgery anyway. The surgery itself, that once they got into removing the tumor, they realized that it ran a lot deeper than they thought, and they had to remove more of my good left liver than they had intended to. And when I finally got out of surgery, I was not aware at the time, but apparently he told my family that they had to take out more of the left side of my liver, and that I probably wouldn't live the week, that I would die of liver failure in 7 days, within 7 days before the next surgery. And that even if I lived, he didn't think now that the liver would grow enough that we would be able to continue with the second surgery either. So, very emotional. Obviously, I don't remember any of that. My sister and I were talking about it this evening, and she was telling me that when my brother called her, that he was crying, and that she was at the mall with family, and she collapsed at the mall as he was telling her that they said I was going to die. And our family member, Nikki, had to take her home, back to her house, and she doesn't really remember a lot after that. It's a blur for her as well. So they apparently said it would take 3 days to see if I was going to live or not. And every day the response was kind of like, well, he's holding his own. Not if it looked good or bad, just that I was holding my own. But I lived. And my liver needed to grow 30% in order for me to be able to have the second surgery. In 7 days, it had to grow 30%. And it grew 29%. So on April 8th, I had the second surgery to remove basically the entire right side of my liver. They showed me pictures after of both surgeries, and you can see the red liver tissue, and it's like, the inside's like all white cancer tissue all over. So I now have a peace sign going down my body from where they did the surgery. And so there's a lot of recovery in there. I'll get into that in the next video. We'll kind of pick up from here. But just kind of, again, we'll go through this bit by bit. There's one more surgery after this, and then it'll really start to go out. It won't take long to finish it up after that. And then we'll get back to some of what we're doing here at CHPSA. So stay tuned. We'll have more soon. Bye.